Takes off. There we go. Alrighty. That can go away. Alright, we're going to start here in 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to Geekvice, episode 151, proving any vice with enough geek can become a virtue. My name's Morph. That man is not Kip. Good evening, not Kip. We are lucky enough to have one of the awesome co-hosts from the Daydream Instruction Manual, Josh. How are you doing tonight, Josh?
I am doing excellent. How are you?
I am doing pretty good. Just the normal craziness of a Sunday and a weekend of kids stuff and all that. But um, what have you been doing this week? We had Big Sasquatch Week for the podcast arcade last week, and enjoying all that stuff. Man, I don't think I've listened to that many podcasts in 1 week in a long time. So.
Yeah, that was fun. That was cool that we got to get everybody together to do that. That was something. I hope we do more things like that in the future.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And Eddie would get really mad at us if I don't mention the fact that they are doing, and you are going to help them out with this as well, a 24-hour podcast
Yes.
on November 26th. Is that
Yeah, it's Black Friday. So it's going from midnight, morning of Friday, to midnight, the evening of Friday. It's out at the Scooters. I believe it's on like 156th and Pacific. So out there west, and yeah, it's not just Daydream Instruction Manual. It's all the podcast, members, of the network. So should be a fun evening, I can tell you that, or a fun day rather.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's gonna be a long day, but that'll be fun. I'm a little bummed. I didn't realize that this was happening until I'd already booked to be out of town. So I'm gonna be in Branson, Missouri, enjoying the hillbilliness down there, and
Nice.
spending time with my family. So yeah, that'll be fun. I'm gonna have to try to find it while on my phone so that I can at least listen and maybe heckle you guys a little bit when you start falling asleep.
Yeah, it'll be a packed day, and we're gonna bring in some interviews from other people for some upcoming events and stuff like that to fill the time. And I mean, you're not the only one. There's other people that obviously it's a holiday weekend, so we understand. We're gonna have some other things to fill the gaps, so should be a good time.
Yeah, it'll be fun. That'll be fun. So, Josh, how did you get started with Daydream Instruction Manual? I know that program. Well, before it was Daydream, it was the Doug and Eddie show,
Right?
and did you kind of jump in when as soon as they switched to rebranded? Is
No, I came in later. Daydream was doing a podcast at O Comic Con. I think it was in July. Kind of, interviewing the local talent and everything. I was there to showcase my graphic novel that just came out over the summer, The Fierce Are Fading. So we did a little interview there, and then they read the book and had me back on later to kind of talk more about it. And man, I just fell in love with those guys. I love nerd conversations of all kinds. So I came back, let's see, one more time for an Alamo event, and then I just reached out and said, hey, dude, I love you guys. If you needed a fourth, how did I say it? If you needed D'Artagnan to your Three Musketeers, I would be the D'Artagnan. So they spoke it over, and they let me into the fold. So yeah, it's been great ever since.
that is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, those guys over there are super cool, and anyone who doesn't listen to Daydream Instruction Manual, they definitely should, because that is a really good podcast, a lot of fun to listen to.
Hmm.
So, you said that you put out a graphic novel. What else do you enjoy doing when you're not doing Daydream stuff?
Yeah, well, writing takes up most of my time. I put out the graphic novel, and then I put out the novel version of it a couple months later. So, if I'm not at a comic convention for the weekend or something like that, then I'm working on the next book. But otherwise, I've got my TV shows. We like to go to the movies a lot. We love the Alamo in
Yeah.
town for all the stuff they bring. So I'm a fan of all forms of media. So I try not to work too much, but writing does take over most of my time. But when I can find some time, I watch my favorite shows or binge watch something new, or go to the movies.
Well, here's your chance to pimp some of the stuff that you've written, because I haven't seen any of your stuff. I'm gonna have to go check it out. I didn't realize you were a professional writer. So
Yeah.
what do you got out there, man?
Well, the website is joshuadhowell.com. I've only just started getting back into it. I wrote and published a book when I got out of high school while I was in the military. It was called Guarding Heaven's Gates. Um, it was a fantasy novel that I just learned to despise because it was written horribly, and it involved my ex-girlfriend, and I can't stand that book now. So I stopped writing for a while, kind of got back into it with this graphic novel, and the novel that came out. It's kind of like a sci-fi novel, and so that's reignited the fire. I'm got a couple more projects coming up, so trying to keep busy.
Man, that's awesome. So you are definitely the perfect person for this topic that we've got coming up
Yeah.
on here because so I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in there because and I didn't bring my tablet down with me. I read a lot of my comic books. I read digitally, and uh, it was a while back, a long while back. There was a Humble Bundle, which is where I like getting a lot of my comic books. Believe it or
Right.
not, Humble Bundle had a book bundle that was all Dungeons and Dragons themed books, and Forgotten Realms, I think, is what they called it, and it had the graphic novel adaptation of the Legends of Dritz. It was the first couple books. I think it was Homeland and Exile,
Mhm.
which I've read all the novels, um, but reading the comic books, I was like, oh, you know what? I really enjoyed the comic books. They gave some more. I don't know. They gave the pictures to the words, that which is what it's supposed to do. But and then I also read the Dresden Files, which is that's a comic book series that I read the comic books for, and I've never read any of the novels. So
Mhm.
um, I tend to, for anyone who listens to this show, I tend to not read novels because if they're longer than 22 pages, I don't have the time for it. So, um, but but with me getting into all these big trades that I've gotten now, now I'm thinking I might need to get back into the novels. So,
Sure.
what are your thoughts on the adaptation between novels and comic books? Is it hard to make them both stand alone?
Yeah, I mean, when I was writing my book, um, I've always written, novel form, so I had to kind of learn how to adapt that into a script. Obviously, you got you rely on pictures and dialogue, and not necessarily all the finer details that you can, explode on a page in a regular novel format. So I've seen it done well with certain books being turned into graphic novels, and then it's just the same as like a movie adaptation. Some of them
Right.
are right on, some of them leave out so much stuff just because either they can't do it or they weren't wanting to do it. So there's a few that I really love too. I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I love that short story of his, and it's never been uh, adapted properly on film. Even the
Right.
Will Smith version. was good, but it had nothing to do with the original short story. And
Yeah,
they did a full length graphic novel for that that was almost word for word for the short, and I loved it. I mean, that really brought the story to life, you know.
I didn't realize that one had done a graphic novel.
It's a rare one. I actually found it at Legend Comics like 2 years ago, but that's a rare one. And I'm trying to think of it. Ender's Game is another one. We finally got a film adaptation, what, last year or the year before, but
Yeah.
they were doing Marvel had done some graphic novels for that. That was really cool to see that, kind of modern classic book be brought to life. So that was cool.
Yeah, and that's one that I haven't read the comic books for. I have the original novel that I've read sitting
Hmm.
somewhere on the bookshelf over there, um, which is a really good book,
Hmm.
surprisingly good. I don't know, surprisingly good. That's probably a bad way to put it, but um, it was one of those that I didn't read it. I didn't read it when it first came out. I didn't read it when I was younger. I read it after I was old and crotchety, and so I I think I expected the book to just be like, is it's a book, but I actually really enjoyed it. And for me to enjoy an for me to enjoy any novel is takes a lot of effort. There are very few novels that I can pick up and actually continually read through. Usually because I it gets set off to the side and I either get only part of the way through and then I try to jump back into it after not reading for a month.
Hmm.
Which is why comic books work out so well for me because it's short form. I mean, it's like reading a short story. You can read it, feel like you're done, pick up the next book, and then you can keep going.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'm looking at I Am Legends now, or I Am Legend right now. I didn't realize that it was the adaptation was done by Steve Niles. That's
Yep.
he did. Um, oh
Uh,
shit, the other
Not 30
zombie
Days a
movie.
Night. Yeah, 30 Days a Night.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that one. The other zombie one.
Yep, the
That's
big zombie vampire one. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. Okay, no, that's really cool. Now I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to go find that, and that actually got 4 out of 5 stars on
Oh, yeah,
Goodreads.
definitely. Well, that I don't know if you've ever read the short story for I Am Legend, but it is incredibly simple but incredibly freaky.
Yeah.
They kept on trying to blow it up into something else for the movies and especially Will Smith's version, but the uh, the original story, it wasn't in the big city. It didn't have all this other stuff going around, and it was just written very simply. But it just creeped me out when I read it the first time. And I think even Stephen King has referenced that as one of his biggest inspirations.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty well done back then.
Right. Right. Yeah. That is definitely cool. Um, Now you have on here Game of Thrones. That has that gotten made into a graphic novel?
Yeah. It's not the best, but yeah, it's gotten a few volumes of graphic novels by now. When Game of Thrones started hitting it big, I think about a year into it, they started doing graphic novels for it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Uh, Not the best, but it's something that came to mind. Um, I also put down Screw Tape Letters. That was the first graphic novel I ever got. Um, my grandpa is strongly religious, and so he would find these religious graphic novels to give to me. And Marvel was doing some religious prints for a while. C.S. Lewis, he wrote like Chronicles
Mm-hmm.
of Narnia, so they were doing some of his other books. And Screw Tape Letters was all about this demon that was trying to corrupt some poor guy's soul or something like that. And so that was my first graphic novel, and I still have it somewhere on my
Oh,
shelf
wow.
back there. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think it's neat. There's still some graphic novels that it's only a graphic novel. It's not based on a comic. It's not a
Right.
collection of comics. It's not based on a movie or a book, and I still love those because it does take a lot of skill to tell a good story in short form like that, and not have it be based on anything else. If you're basing it off a book, you do have a lot of other content that somebody else can go look at that and then appreciate the graphic novel more.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, and
yeah.
I would think I would think that there's got to be a little bit to it that makes it that makes the graphic novel side of it so difficult to nail down. In the novel form, you can describe an entire scene, but you can still leave a lot. You can leave some gaps in it and let the reader's mind pick that up. But if you
Hmm.
leave any gaps within a scene in a graphic novel, then those just become glaring holes. You have to detail the background as much as you detail the characters, and I would think that becomes a little bit more challenging from a writing perspective, because it's just is the art is just as important as the dialogue.
Yeah, yeah, and it's another form of pacing too. Pacing, story. Obviously, you have to cut out stuff to make it happen, but you know, a book can be really riveting even if nothing's happening.
Yeah.
But it's harder to convey that in pictures and in dialogue, and you don't just want it to be an art book and stuff like that. So. Yeah, it definitely took a lot of work from my end, and when I was writing mine, I was having a hard time finishing my book.
Mm-hmm.
I was just having walls and just the final touches of it. So making the graphic novel kind of broke it down a little easier for me, and it took a lot of work. It took about 4 months to write the graphic novel, and then once that was finished, I was able to go back and fill in the holes with the novel. So yeah, it's definitely a task, no matter what, if you're doing the novel or the graphic novel. So I appreciate both.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that you appreciate both, because that gives me something else to read. I don't
There
have
you
to
go.
just pick up the big block of text. I can enjoy
Mhm.
my graphics. So on from your perspective, and kind of with your history in this, um, do you prefer, or I guess, do you like doing the graphic novel first and then going back and filling in the details like you had said on your last one, um, or is it better to just go and get something that's just get the novel done and then find somebody to fill in the pictures?
Um, I mean, um, it wasn't planned to do it that way. In fact, it wasn't even planned to have a graphic novel. I had been working on that book for 2 years, and I just was not finding the willpower to finish it.
Right.
And I had just been challenged by somebody to turn it into a comic. And in the early stages, we had been picked up by a publisher in Canada. So that kind of lit the fire under the graphic novel version, and we spent the next year working on the graphic novel. And um, that was never a plan. And so going forward, if I could afford to do another graphic novel, because I can't draw, I had to pay somebody to draw. Dear
Right.
God. So yeah, going forward, I think I would write the book first,
Mm-hmm.
just because you want to. I think it's important to have both medias. There's certain people out there that really appreciate the graphic novel, but
Mm-hmm.
there's other ones that just said, "Hey, this sounds great," but they still have a distaste for comics, and so
Yeah.
they wouldn't pick it up unless I had a book version, which was, I mean, I guess it's just people's preferences, but
Yeah, yeah. To
yeah.
each their own. I still find it funny that comics, after all these years, still has this stigma on it of, oh, well, that's a comic. That's just for kids. That's not gonna be for me. And I find it hilarious that after what Marvel's done in the cinematic universe, that
Mhm.
this stigma is still there, and that graphic novels. I mean, I remember as a kid going into Barnes and Noble or Borders, and you'd go. You want to go pick up and go look at the graphic novels that they have there, and you got to go and back and look, and like the kids section is right here, and then the graphic novels is like right next to it, and you're like, I'm pretty sure that this book, like 100 Bullets, probably shouldn't be next to where the kids are.
Right.
Just gonna throw that out there. I mean,
Yep.
I had a conversation with one of the librarians at the local Johnson County branch of one of the libraries down here, and because I thought it was hilarious that they had a all their graphic novels were over in the young adult section, and I'm like, um, you know, I was looking through them, and none of them in there were really that bad. They probably fit in the young adult section, but I was looking for something. I wanted to find, like, why don't you have the Watchmen here, and why don't you have? And this was when the Watchmen was getting made into a movie,
Yeah.
and I was like, where is this book, and where's this book, and these books should be in here,
Mhm.
and they shortly after that, they put an entire wall back in a corner. You have to know where it's at, but it's back in a corner. But it has all the more adult graphic novels back there. So I was really proud of them for taking that on. But it's been, I mean, even just having to explain that to a librarian, you're like, you should know this. Just
Yeah.
look at this book. If you see somebody's face just melting off in the picture, probably don't want little kids looking at this. Just gonna throw it
Mhm.
out there.
Yeah, we had this conversation on Daydream Instruction Manual a couple months back about that stigma that still exists, and it is considerably less now,
Yeah,
especially with this superhero becoming a film genre. I mean, it is certainly it's. I mean, it's a good chunk of every year is superhero films now, but it's still a thing. It's still a stigma where it people look at it like a kid's thing, and yeah, there's a huge chunk of comics that are the superhero um, genre, but there's also indie comics and other things that are vary their own story, and they don't involve super anything, and they're stories that just the person really wanted to have in illustration. And
yeah.
um, I mean, I think it's certainly grown over the years, and but yeah, I think there'll probably always be a stigma of some kind. That's how it is.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's still a stigma to Dungeons and Dragons, and that's
Sure.
so there's always gonna be a stigma to something. Somebody's gonna throw a fit about it. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
for God's sakes, the video games are still considered to create people to be ultra violent, and we've proven that wrong year after year. So, hey, what are we
Hmm.
gonna do?
Yeah.
So, so you said you're a big fan of the TV shows and enjoying that. Are you enjoying the superhero TV show craze that is going on right now? We've got tons and tons of comic book adaptations into TV shows, whether it's Arrow, The Flash, Marvel's Agents of Shields, and then you've got the all the Netflix, Luke
Hmm.
Cage, and all those. How are you enjoying those?
I think it is just great. I mean, I loved Smallville back in the day when it was on. I thought that was monumental for a TV show, and that certainly paved the road for what we have now. They tried
Absolutely.
doing a couple things after that, like they had a Birds of Prey show
Yeah, that
that
was
died.
awful.
Yeah, and they had a Witchblade show that died horribly, and but yeah, CW certainly took the reins on that with Arrow, and then kind of built their own DC universe, and Fox got on with Gotham, and
Yeah.
was it NBC that had Supergirl first? I think it was NBC because ABC has Marvel.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it
Right.
was NBC. But then uh, Supergirl's on CW now, though,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
NBC gave that up just because they
Yeah,
were
they got to
done.
be kicking themselves for that one.
Well, they were going at it the wrong way, and they were spending they were spending $3 million an episode on that show,
Oh,
um,
that's
and it didn't even look like 3 million an episode, you know. So
yeah.
yeah, and then Netflix setting the bar for strong adult content with their Marvel shows. So it's great. I love it.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this thing like crazy. So much so that I'm having a hard time keeping up with everything. So, I've watched. I haven't watched any current. Actually, let me take that back. The only current superhero show that I have watched, um, which is not a Netflix one, because I've watched all of those. Those are easy to watch. Um,
The
but
weekend.
Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I have actually started watching mainly because somebody started complaining to me about Ghost Rider in there. And so I had to go watch it so that I could find out why he was complaining about it.
Hmm.
And I'm not really angry about it. I don't think it's terrible. I do think they kind of missed the boat on some of it. First of all, Ghost Rider rides a motorcycle. That's why he's a rider and not a driver.
Hmm.
But you know, not exactly. I'm gonna guess it's just because of that's gonna be sponsorship deals and the fact that they already have a license agreement with Dodge. Um, that's why the
Well,
Dodge cars have been in everywhere. But
yeah.
okay.
Well, I mean, the current Ghost Rider comic, he rides that car.
Oh,
He
really?
drives the car. They rebooted it a year or two ago, and it's this new version of Ghost Rider, and he has a car, and he has that jacket with the white stripes or whatever.
Right.
So I think they're basing it off of that, and um, I'm surprised Agents of Shield is still on. I mean, it's gone through so many transitions.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, it was originally supposed to be a filler between Marvel movies, and then they ditched that idea, and then it was going to be a prequel to the Marvel Inhumans movie. So they had all the Inhumans on there, and
Right.
then they ditched the Inhumans idea, and so the Ghost Rider was like their last straw. I think if they can't make this season happen, it probably won't be on too much longer.
Well, and that's the ratings on that show have never been um, they've never been through the roof, and so I'm kind
Right.
of surprised that they've kind of kept it around. But I actually enjoy watching it. But since I don't have TV, I don't have cable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a cord cutter, so I get all my stuff after the fact anyway.
Me too. Yep.
So it's a little harder to watch some of that stuff live, and I know, and that's the other thing with the way the analytics are done for watching shows. If you don't watch it live, they don't necessarily take you into account as much. You're a
Right.
smaller, they consider you a smaller demographic when in reality that's the larger demographic. So until they
Right.
figure out a way to actually check that, they're gonna have a hard time with those. But
Well,
um,
I think Disney probably wants them to keep that show. I mean, ABC is still making money off the Netflix shows,
yeah,
even though
yeah,
it's Netflix. So it's not like they're hurting. I mean, otherwise they would have let that property go a long time ago. But
right.
I'm sure they're getting enough money from Disney to keep that going as long as they want to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They've got the blank check. They can do whatever they want. So
Right.
that
Right.
that'll stay on for a while. I will say that the graphics, the way they do the the normal face turning into a burning skull,
Hmm.
really cool. I like that. I think they did a really good job with it. And I also so are you up to date on the current comic book iteration of Ghost Rider then?
No, I just know enough of it to know that's what it's based on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so
Mhm.
far behind in my comic books. I'm almost a year behind. I've got a stack of books that I need to read for that
Nice.
just keep growing and growing. But it's because I get stuck reading these other books that are so old. I mean, I read the old 1980 Forgotten Realms Dungeons and Dragons anthology book, and that took me quite a while to read. I had no business, like, that doesn't help me get up to date with anything. It just takes up a lot of time. But
Nice.
man, was it good to go back and read some of that stuff. Um,
Yes.
but I like the fact that Ghost Rider in Agents of Shield is more of a Hispanic or Latino type character. I like that. It kind of gives another. Um, I wonder, and that's what makes me wonder if maybe Agents of Shield is using this show more as a focus group for certain characters. They did this with the Inhumans. I
Mhm.
think they did it with the Inhumans to see what the backlash between the comic fans, they're the hardcore fans,
Sure.
how they were going to react to the Inhumans and whether or not they felt that that would be something that they could. I know they say they're going to do an Inhumans movie, but it's so far down the road they could easily scratch that if they wanted to.
Hmm.
Um, you
Well, they
know,
have. They've taken it off the schedule for now. So
yeah.
it in all forms, it probably is scratched. Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of wonder if maybe this Ghost Rider on here is just kind of a let's see what people think about it. Let's see if there's a lot of backlash and if it's something that whether they decide to move the show as a whole to Netflix and do a Netflix series on it, or do it or add that in as a character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Hmm.
I kind of wonder if this is maybe that's where they're going with for this.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be. I mean, especially with rebooting Ghost Rider. I don't think it wasn't doing terrible in the comics, but it wasn't getting crazy amounts of attention. So the Hispanic character on the show is reflecting the new comic. That
Right.
is the character in the comics. So yeah, they could be using that to help promote their smaller properties, and then maybe gauge response and see if that's something they could blow up for something else. I mean, especially if anybody needs it, it's Ghost Rider with the work that Nicolas Cage did to it, just
Oh
running
God.
to the ground. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember feeling stupid enough to get excited for that sequel because it was rated R and it had Idris Elba in it and it was
Yep.
gonna be so good, and it was not at
No.
all. It
God.
was
No.
horrible, just bad.
It,
So that needs
yeah.
redemption for sure.
Yes, it does. It needs a nice movie reboot. So hopefully we can see that coming. The
Yeah.
uh, the other show that I've been watching. Have you watched the first season of Supergirl?
Yeah, and some of the second season, yeah.
Okay, so I just started the first season, and I'm about what? That's a 23 episode one, so I'm almost halfway done.
It was
Um,
23 episodes, really?
I
Wow.
think so.
Okay.
Now I have to look it up. But the nope, I can't spell Supergirl season one.
But so you're
Um,
watching the first season, which was still in NBC's hands, I
right.
think.
Yeah, I think so. But I have to say that watching that show, it 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 felt like it was in a it felt like a CW show. Honestly, it felt. I honestly felt like it was the same as uh, like it was Flash. Like they just took
Mhm.
Flash's character out and um, put in Supergirl. I was a little disappointed, at least up to a point. Yeah, first season was 20 episodes and was aired on CBS, not
CBS,
ABC.
yeah.
So, so about I think I am about 10 episodes in. I just got to the point where um, I'm a couple episodes after they introduced Martian Manhunter
Oh
to the
yeah.
series, and that's actually reinvigorated me wanting to keep watching this. I was almost to the point where I'm just like, because I'm just watching it on Netflix, and I'm just like, you know what, I could I could go watch. I still got some episodes left of Penny Dreadful that I could watch.
Great show.
Like I've got some other things that I could go watch, and I chose to watch this one because it was the right time. It was the right amount of stuff, and I kind of wanted to see what it was like. I heard lots of people talk so good about it, but I had gotten to the point where I was just like, I'm kind of not liking this. And then they dropped the Martian Manhunter thing on me, and I
Hmm.
was like, that was sneaky. That was well played. That was well crafted, and I feel like it fits. I'm not a Supergirl reader. I'm not a Superman reader. Honestly, I think
Hmm.
Superman is one of the worst. He's not one of the worst. He's one of my least favorite comic book characters out there. Um, for all the tropey reasons and whatnot. But so Supergirl kind of falls into that same category. And I liked how they made her um, trying to find her way. I liked the searching for the answers on how to be a superhero, and not just any superhero. How to live up to Superman's level
Hmm.
that he's set already out there in the world. And so I kind of enjoyed it for a while, but then I felt like the episodes were coming becoming just kind of the same cut and paste type
Hmm.
story. I really really don't like the Supergirl falling in love with Jimmy Olsen, but has the other guy, the Win, the nerd IT guy that really likes her. Like,
Hmm.
I why do they always have to put in a love triangle? Why does every comic book TV show have to have a love triangle in it? Why? Answer me this, Josh. Come on, help me.
Well, first of all, I think that was one of CBS's weaknesses and why they lost the show. Um, well, you've made it through the first half of it. I will tell you optimistically, the second half is a lot better. I felt the same way. The first half of the season was very much that Felicity vibe, and
Mm-hmm.
they had to put the just all the tropes of a female-led show in there,
Yeah.
and it was weak. That don't worry though, that triangle thing doesn't last very long.
Good.
They get rid of a lot of things in that show that didn't work. But what I did like about the first season, I don't know if they did switch writers, but it did feel like the second season was written differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not a fan of Superman either. I was when I was a kid, but as I grew up, I just got tired of them just creating a new superpower for him so he could get out of whatever. So I just didn't really care for Superman too much longer. But I did recognize that each episode in the later half of the season was focusing on some Superman lore or taking things from like the Justice League cartoons and stuff like that. They really did go all out for their first season, and I liked that a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and then the CW taking it over, um, they definitely made some changes abruptly to the show that I think are for the better.
Good.
So I was really impressed with it. Actually, I thought it was going to be too much of a female kind of focusing on female love interests and
Yeah.
too much stuff and they didn't go that route, especially towards the end, and they also addressed the same things that these superhero movies always come up with, like, well, if it's such a big deal, why isn't Superman here or something like that, and they
Yeah.
do address that later on in the show pretty cleverly. So yeah, I really dug the first season. I was pretty impressed with it. My wife hates it, but I love it. So, yeah, I like that show, and I'm glad CW took it over.
Yeah. It's got me to the point now where I feel like I've got to get caught up. I got to get through the first season, and then the second season, which is out now. It was just kind of just started this year.
Right.
That's projected for a full 22 episode season, which
Yep.
uh, I'm sorry, the 20 when you start getting into the 20 plus episodes of a show, man, is that hard to rewatch or is that hard to watch like on your free time
Mm-hmm.
around everything else? Like, holy cow, it's hard. I kind of would like to see, and I've talked about this on Geekvice forever. I would like to see the United States broadcasting companies start looking at other ways of doing things, because this idea that you have to run stuff from this time of year to this time of year with this massive break in the middle so that you can have all the holidays because nobody's watching TV during the holidays. I think they completely missed the boat. More people watch shows during the holidays than they don't
That's
because
true.
they're all sitting not going to work.
Hmm.
But I would like to see them adopt some of these. Well, I think Netflix does a pretty good job, and they only have 13 episodes. And
Hmm.
the British shows, those are perfect. I think I really enjoy those. Although sometimes the scheduling of them is a little weird. Trying to find when the next Doctor Who's coming on is
Yeah.
brutal.
They take
Uh,
bigger breaks for sure. Yeah.
yeah, they
Well, if you look at some of the biggest shows or the best shows that are on, yeah, you're right. They're more like 12, 13 episodes, and
yeah
the reason they're so good is because they have less time for filler.
yeah
And when you get these 20 to 24 episode seasons, yeah, there's like 12, 13 episodes that are just in there to fill space, and it's really only the beginning and maybe the end couple episodes that are the good ones in the season.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah. I think we could take like I think it would have been like season like season 2 of Heroes, maybe. That was brutal. Like, hey, we
Hmm.
could have chopped that down to 5 episodes and made it just fine. It's yeah. I think this idea that we have to have 22, or we have to have 20 some episodes in a season is just. I think it's just it's old school thinking, and it's somebody going, well, that's just the way we've always done it. Well, it doesn't have to be the way it might be the way we've always done it. Doesn't mean we have to do it that way in the future. So
Well, yeah, if you look at the CW shows, for example, uh, Flash seems to be doing a good job of having two main story arcs for their season that
mhm,
kind of, the first half of the season is one story arc, the second half is another story arc, and
yeah,
so it flows pretty well for them, but Arrow has been struggling the most with these 24 episode story arcs that are
yeah,
just so muddied. And
yeah,
I hope they can figure out a way to save that show because I love Arrow, but it's the weakest show on the CW right now, and it's the forefather of all these shows. So if that would go away, that'd be kind of sad.
yeah. And well, and I'm almost kind of wondering if they've this season I think is their 100th episode season.
Hmm. Yep.
So they're gonna hit that 100 episode mark, which is always a magic number for the United States rules of things when they hit 100 episodes, and they can actually go into syndication and things like that. And so more money for them, and they don't have to make as many shows. So I hope that I think that's part of the reason why we see all these 20 to 22 episode seasons, so that they can get, if you have 20 episodes a season, then in 5 seasons, if you can make it 5 seasons long, you can go into syndication, and that's always been that magic number is getting into syndication. So I'm curious to see what happens this year
Hmm.
with Arrow. I haven't watched um, any of this season yet. I've got some of them queued up to watch, but I haven't watched any of them yet. So I'm kind of curious to see. And I know that there's a whole new team around Arrow, and this will be the
Hmm.
like third whole new team around Arrow. So they're gonna need to figure something out, because they're gonna run out of comic book characters that
Hmm.
connect to Arrow, and they're gonna have to connect them to something else. So I will say that my favorite episodes from Arrow are episodes where they cross over with the Flash.
Yeah.
And as a cord cutter, those are a pain in the ass to watch because I usually watch one show all the way through and then go watch the next one. And
Hmm.
last time I got caught up and wasn't in sync at the right way, and I was all kinds of confused. But man, those were some really good episodes
Yeah.
when somebody would just show up on the other show. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
this is kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, they're going to do that a lot more this season. With apparently there's a four-way crossover with all four shows.
Really?
So that because I think currently Supergirl is still not in their dimension. Um, so you haven't seen the Flash Supergirl crossover yet, right?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so that does exist, but
Okay.
Supergirl is not in their universe. She's in another dimension or whatever.
Okay.
So I don't know how they're going to do that, but yeah, they've got I can't remember when, but it's coming up. They've got the Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, and Legends of
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, or whatever it's
Hmm.
called. They're gonna all be together. So yeah, that's gonna be something. But
Yeah.
it'll be hard to watch if you're not watching them at the same time. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna have to keep note of that one so I can track that
Mhm.
one down and make sure that happens that I get those all plugged in right. I'm
Yep.
sure a lot of that's gonna that's gonna center around Flash and the crap that's going down in Flash right now,
Right.
because they're doing time travel like nobody else.
Hmm.
And the Flashpoint. Did you read the Flashpoint comic books?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, those were some crazy stories in there. The way they mixed all that stuff together and kind of collapsed the multiverse in and on itself in that series. That was a lot of fun to read, and I that's what this season of Flash is kind of built around, or almost feels like it's being built around. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, that's gonna be fun. I'm gonna have to go watch those. I'm gonna have to put that on there. I've got Flash queued up too, so I can get caught up on Flash and Arrow in probably about, oh hell, I could probably do it in a week.
Well, yeah, Flash is so easy to watch. I love that show. They are going full steam ahead with that. I think it's been written perfectly, and like I said, being a fan of Smallville, it took 10 seasons for him to get to
Yeah,
Superman level, and so to see the Flash, it had, or it's well, let's start with Arrow. It had an amazing first season for Arrow,
yeah,
and then Flash was then paced even better. And so it's just like the CW is looking at their shows. They're not doing cardboard copies. They're improving on their pacing, and they've really built up this great franchise that is just owning the comic book TV universe right now. So it's pretty impressive, actually.
yeah, yeah. And I would say, uh, you had said the Arrows are their weakest of their shows. I would say if they're not careful, they're gonna lose Legends of Tomorrow before they lose Arrow, because that
Mm.
one's
Yeah.
yeah, that one's one where they kind of have to. That one's got to be hard for the writers to actually do and do enough to keep people engaged, because each episode, because it's so hard to keep a continuing storyline going on there when you're jumping all over the place. The first season was really hard to follow. The way they ended the first season though was awesome, and I'm looking forward to what this season is. That's one that I've got to add. I don't have any of those shows up and running yet,
Mm.
but they're
Well,
definitely on the list.
because who were I'm blanking on his name. What's the name of the guy they were chasing in the first season? The villain.
That was, oh crap.
Gosh,
Rip
what is
Hunter.
it?
Rip Hunter was the guy. Was the good guy.
Uh,
Uh,
um, gosh darn it. It too. I'm trying to figure it out. Who were they searching? I thought it started with a Z or something. Gosh, I'm just blanking on it right now. Um, gosh darn it. Who are they? Who are they fighting?
yeah, who it was? Well, because they were dealing with the time. I want to say Time Lords, and that's all wrong. That's a whole nother thing. We're gonna get into
I
Doctor
mean,
Who
that's
again.
true. Yeah.
But yeah, where Vandal Savage.
Vandal Savage. There we go. So they were chasing Vandal, and at first, I was like, "Yes, this is a cool show. This is going to be great." but then yeah, they just got so muddied, and every episode was it was getting stupid. It was be like he's right there. Doesn't matter if something's going down. And in fact, there was one time where they just kind of let him go, and it was clear that they were drawing that out.
Yeah.
So, but there were some gems in the first season, and it's definitely the lighter version of the shows. It has more comedy, more fun. So
Yeah.
I think if they I don't think the second season is surrounded by or surrounding Savage. So I think if they kept with this lightheartedness and this was just the fun group,
Mm-hmm.
I think they could keep it going for a while. I love the show when I'm able to watch it, but um, yeah, I guess that would probably be the first show to fall. But I think they're having fun with it, and as long as they keep it relevant with the crossovers and stuff,
Right.
I think it'll stay around for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and I enjoy the way the characters feed off of each other. I like that Rip Hunter is just kind of like a pompous ass to everybody, and he's like, he's kind of the old fuddy duddy of the group. Like, you guys are all a bunch of kids. I've been around way longer than you have. You have no idea what you're doing. When in reality, he has no idea what he's doing. He just kind of
Right.
puts on that show. I enjoy that. Um, I really like. I honestly would like to see more of Firestorm, and but I would I almost was a little upset when Firestorm was going to be in Legends of Tomorrow and out of the Flash universe. I would like to see more of Firestorm in the Flash world, but um, getting to see Firestorm and getting to see him, especially towards the end of that season, get his abilities to be able to transmute things and change the properties of materials was um, at the atomic level. I thought that was really cool. I really like that, and I hope they keep building on that. Let him do more of that. Firestorm is always a character that I've enjoyed and never really gotten enough of.
Yeah, well, I think it was smart to put him on that show because he was going to be overshadowed on the Flash,
Yeah,
and the Flash has so much effects going into it anyway that they were either going to not utilize him very much or it was going to hurt the effects of other things on the show. So, um, I think moving Firestorm to 2 days or Legends of Tomorrow allows more depth for that character and all the
yeah,
characters on there. I think they were all going to be overshadowed on their respective shows, and so it's nice to have because there are some great characters on all these shows, and if you were to put them in an environment where they had their own show, it might not work. But if you put them in this little team, then you can
yeah.
see more of them, and so I think it was definitely smart with Ray Palmer taking him out
Mm-hmm.
of Arrow, just because he wasn't really working in Arrow, and the whole love thing back and forth with Felicity or no, not yeah, Felicity Smoke. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
just getting annoying.
yeah,
And Black Canary or White Canary or whatever we're calling her now, she works in that show really well, and
yeah. And
so,
I really liked her. I liked her in Arrow, but then they had to. She was her dying and then being resurrected was important for the other characters. That was important for the story
yeah,
and the interaction within the other characters and how that was emotionally going to make those characters um, you know fight down farther
right,
towards the end of
right.
the that was important. I really liked her on the show, so I wasn't upset that she was moved over to Legends of Tomorrow, where you get to see you get to see her use her skills, and
Right.
that I like that. I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't like a attractive lady in leather beating the crap out of everybody? I mean,
That's true. That's true. So, yeah, well, CW is riding high right now. They're doing great, and they're only well, they don't have any real rival on TV. I mean, Fox is doing well with Gotham, but it's a one show thing.
yeah.
Um,
And
and
it's completely different from what
it
they're
is
doing on the CW. It's just it's just so far out there. The I would even make the argument that Gotham is closer to something that would rival like um, The Shield or NYPD Blue
That's
type
what
of
they
a
wanted.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love and hate Gotham. They do so many things right and so many things wrong. I think
Mhm.
when they focus too much on origins of a character, it just hurts the show so much.
Yeah.
Like the only real good origin is the Penguin because the
Mhm.
Penguin is older when Batman comes to become Batman, and so I love seeing this young version of the Penguin rising in the ranks. But every time they show somebody else, it's always like, oh, that person's way too old to be that character,
Yeah.
or I liked the Jerome kid a lot, but I hated that they made him the origin of the Joker
Yeah.
because it's the most simplest of origins. Like the Joker has been around in comics for 75 years, and we still don't have a definitive origin for him because it would humanize him and it would take something away from his whole character, and so just making him what was it, a carnival kid that his mom slept around a lot and that made him the Joker. it
Yeah.
was the it was the weakest origin anybody could have thought up. So
Oh
I
yeah.
hated that. But some of
And
the stuff they're doing now is pretty good.
yeah, and that's I've been told that I need to go pick it back up. I watched the first season, and then I have not watched a single episode of the second season.
Mm.
And I basically just wrote it off as this show's just it's just not for me.
Hmm.
But I've been told with the way this third season is picked up that I need to go check it out and I need to watch it. So I don't know. I might just skip the whole second season, but I my biggest complaint is just like yours. My complaint is that the way they've set up the show Gotham, it is supposed to be about Jim Gordon and Jim Gordon's um, cleaning up Gotham.
Hmm.
But the problem is that in this show, they've turned Jim Gordon into Batman because Jim Gordon has to go stop all these supervillains. Well,
Hmm.
Jim Gordon's never been able to stop the supervillains. That's why Batman was around. Batman came about because crime had run rampant and villains were everywhere. He needed to come in and stop them. So they've now just basically destroyed the Batman origin by putting Jim Gordon into this role. Like they've flipped everything that you've ever known about Batman, and they haven't just flipped it on its side. They've rewritten the whole thing. And to me, it, they would have done better. They would have done better if they would have left out all of the supervillains except for maybe the Penguin. I think the Penguin
Hmm.
really is the best one in it because it really is just about that's just a mob story. That's just the Penguin rising to power within the mob, and he was never a in the face of Batman. He was always on the outskirts of Batman. He never went after him. He
Hmm.
just did things that caused the wrath of Batman. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Well, when they first announced Gotham, I thought it was going to be a show based on the GCPD comics, which were
Yeah.
great. It
Yeah.
was it was simultaneously with Batman, but you didn't. It wasn't focused on Batman. It was focused on what the police department did in the city to still remain relevant. And then
Yeah.
when they said no, this is going to be an origin show, I was immediately cautious about it, and
Yeah.
uh, I love Ben McKenzie. I never watched him on what was it called? Or some California show that he started on.
Yeah. Orange County.
Orange County, yeah, something like that.
Orange something.
Yeah, but anyway, I never watched that show. But then he was on a procedural cop show called oh gosh, it's my favorite cop show of all time. Um, is it called? Ben McKenzie, and some of the other Gotham people were on there as well. It was called Southland, and that was
Oh
a
yeah,
great show, and he was great on it. And so having him as Gordon, I liked, but I do get where you're coming from. I think it got better in the second season because they started showing how overwhelmingly bad Gotham was, and how Gordon wasn't going to be able to fix it. And so I think it's been better now.
right.
I really loved the second season, especially what they did with Fish Mooney because she's like the only original character they have on there, and
Right.
she's great. I really liked her. So that going into the third season is involving the Court of Owls, which they can do because the Court of Owls has supposedly been in Gotham for centuries.
Yeah.
So I think they're starting to become smarter with that show, but it definitely had a rough start for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. So, all right, we have gone on long enough. We're, you know, honestly, I could sit and do this all night. I enjoy
Oh yeah.
talking about this stuff. I love these shows. I love watching TV. I probably watch way too much TV. Um,
I hear
it,
you.
it it goes to show when I cut the cord and I had to start keeping track of the shows that I was watching so that I could figure out, make sure I was getting them. The list was in the 20 different shows, and I'm like, okay, I've got to weed this thing down because trying to keep track of all these shows and when they're out and what they can be watched on, and that just became a little ridiculous. So,
Oh.
but so, Josh, let everybody know where they can find all about you if they want to go find your books and your graphic novel. Um, where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. Well, like I said, my website is Joshua D. Howell. D is in Daniel. Howell, HOWELL .com. That is just kind of a base where I kind of show off what's coming up as far as the events I have going on coming up. We've got a big one in April. We're going to be at C2E2 in Chicago, so we're really excited about that. The Fierce Are Fading is on Facebook. If you just look that up, and I'm also on Twitter, and that's linked to the website. And so my books are all on Amazon if you're interested. Otherwise, find one of the Comic Cons that I'm going to be at and come say hey, and we'll put a book in your hand. So that's
Very
that.
cool, very cool. And I am putting right now. I am putting a link to your website in the show notes, so people can just go, if they're watching this on YouTube, they can just go right down to the notes there and click on that link, get you right to your website, and then go check you out there. That's got your whole Comic Con schedule on there too. It looked like so.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Josh, for joining us. And of course, everyone listening can go check us out. Go check out Geekvice at geekvice.blogspot.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/geekvice. And of course, you can always follow us on Twitter at Geekvice on Twitter. And if you're not watching this on YouTube and you want to go check out the other stuff that we're doing, we've got our YouTube channel at tiny.cc/geekvice. I've just started my Let's Play for Civilization 6 on there. We've got one episode up and another episode coming on Thursday. Every Thursday we'll be putting a new episode up of that game, and we're going to see if I get my ass kicked and how quickly I get my ass kicked, because it happens a lot. So if you want to reach out to us for anything, you can email us at geekvice@gmail.com. Other than that, thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
This podcast is part of the Podcast Arcade Network.